welcome back to my face. Today I thought I would talk about all the books that I read in January and February since I delayed putting up any videos until February. So it's going to be a long one. Between the 2 months I read about 13 books. And I'm counting one that I haven't quite finished yet, but I'm almost done. So I'll get it finished in time, don't worry. So I'm just going to go in the order that I read them because that makes the most sense to me. So to start off the year, I read The Dreamers by Karen Thompson Walker, and I gave that 5 stars. Absolutely amazing. It struck me as like Inception vibes, and I totally loved it. It was the first thing I listened to. I listened to it in 2 days. It was really great. I'm really lucky. I can listen to audiobooks at work, so it helps make the time pass quicker. Then I listened to Elevation by Stephen King. That was only 3 stars. Not my favorite. I do enjoy his writing though, so I think next up I'm going to probably try listening to It because it's a monster book and I don't want to read that many pages. I would rather have someone read it to me. Yeah, no. Then I read Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. Anyway, I gave it 5 stars. I started watching the Amazon show shortly after, and I'm really liking how like true they stuck to the story. It really has that like not overly done madcap British humor, which I absolutely love. That's the one thing with like podcasts or books or whatever. If I read the synopsis and it says madcap on there, 9 times out of 10 I put it back because it's just you're trying way too hard. After that, I went into a major slump and didn't read anything else for quite a while. And then at the very end of January, I like rushed through the next 4 books. So I read Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Shauna Maguire, gave that 5 stars. Love this series. I'm trying to get so up to the point where I can read the one that was just released because I'm pretty sure I can read it now, but I don't want to like potentially spoil anything for myself. So I think I've only got 1 more book because I read The Bookish Life of Nina Hill right after Down Among the Sticks and Bones. So The Bookish Life of Nina Hill by Abby Waxman. I gave that 4 stars. I initially did not like Nina. I thought she was really boring. And I didn't think I was going to end up enjoying it, which I was kind of sad about because I just started really dipping my toes into contemporary last year. And I found some that I really, really liked. So I wanted to continue to go with that kind of feeling. And a couple of people that I'm friends with, like in real life or have been friends with in real life, they read it and they loved it. And then about a third of the way through, I realized I wasn't liking Nina because she was so boring. And then I realized that I am Nina. And then I started really liking her because I was like, oh no, you can't hate yourself. But I did enjoy the story. And then after that, I read The Great Pretender by Susanna Cahalan. I only gave that 3 stars. I liked the story. I liked the way it was told. But I think there was a glaring misstep because the way that the professor... if you don't know what The Great Pretender is, it's like an investigative book on how well the mental facilities do in rehabilitating people and accurately admitting people. And it was supposedly this test group of like, I think like 12 people. I don't really remember. And they faked mental illness in order to get admitted to see how easy it was to get out. But as you go through, you learn a little bit more. Everything's kind of shady and kind of weird. But the second half of the story is really where it gets super interesting because you start to learn more about the professor who said that he actually created all of these test groups. And I think a glaring misstep in that was that the way the professor was described was like a classic narcissist, and it wasn't mentioned at all, which I was perplexed by. I mean, granted, Susanna Cahalan, she's not a psychologist. I feel like it should have been addressed at some point though, because it's very, if you're interested in things like that, and I definitely am, because mental health is a huge thing that needs to be addressed and taken seriously. It was just an interesting read, but I listened to it, so interesting listen. It could have done more, I think. And then I rounded off January by reading Beneath the Sugar Sky in the same series by Shauna Maguire. Again, 5 stars. Love everything in this series. Down Among the Sticks and Bones was definitely darker than Beneath the Sugar Sky, but Beneath the Sugar Sky itself is not the happiest of stories. And that's when I was going through and making sure that I had all my star ratings listed out correctly, and I looked at like what other people had tagged them on Goodreads. I saw a lot of people tagging this as young adult, and I wouldn't say it's young adult. Like the themes and the things that take place, I don't believe are necessarily geared towards young adult. Not that they can't read it, but I feel like this is really geared towards adults. It's an adult sci-fi fantasy series. It just happens to be short, and it happens to have kids as the main characters. But the major themes, not young adult, not, well, at least not the young adult that is currently being marketed towards young adult. So I would disagree with a lot of those shelvings. And then went on another reading slump. It's really slumpy around here. And I started off February by reading, I actually have some books since I can't edit, but I do have some books. I read The Hollow by Jessica Verde. This is a young adult. I gave it 3 stars. I didn't hate it. There was a moment when I first started that I was like, oh dear God, here comes Twilight again. It was not quite Twilight. It is a... I've got notes over here. It is a young adult, I would say paranormal romance, fantasy, not really. It does take place in the real world, just has like fantastical elements, kind of. I would say paranormal romance. It was okay. I mean, if you're into that kind of thing. It was easy to read. I think I read it in about 3 hours, so not bad. And then after that, decided to switch it up and read Just One Damn Thing After Another by Jodi Taylor. This I gave 4 stars. I wanted to give it 5 stars, but there were just some pacing moments that really bothered me. We seemed to settle on certain things that I didn't know if it was really the best way to get the information across. It was really well done, though. The world is built out really well. I think the time travel elements are concrete enough to follow along, but not too concrete that you're going to be like, where's this going? Because this is a series. I think I'm going to continue the series too. I don't think we'll have to worry too much about rules for time travel. We kind of address some of them in here. A lot of it, especially if you're into more sci-fi stuff, some of it can be assumed on like why you would and wouldn't do things. So I would say give it a read. And then after that, I read Strange Truth by Maggie Thrash. If you look on Goodreads, though, it's called something else. It's called We Know It Was You. It's got a completely different cover. I got this off of Book Outlet, so I don't know if maybe it was a different cover art, depending on what country you're in. I prefer this one than what's on Goodreads. However, this was only a 2-star book. I bought it because, well, I'm cheap, and it was like $1 or $2 on Book Outlet, so I was like, why the heck not? Because I read the synopsis, and it actually sounded pretty interesting. It's a young adult mystery, and the premise of it, I think, had a lot more promise than what was delivered in book. If you are going to give this a go, I will tell you now, all of the characters in it are unlikable. So if you don't like that, then don't read this book. I vividly remember turning to my husband and going, I love how much I hate everyone in here. Like, no one's really good. Everyone's kind of crappy. It's high school, so it's kind of true for a lot of high school. Unless you had a great experience in high school, then awesome. I'm happy for you. But yeah, 2 stars. This is also a series, and I'm not going to be continuing on in it because it was just not good. Yeah, no, not good. Not good at all. A lot of tell, and everything was right there and easily explainable. Not good. What are you going to do? Then after that, I read The Anomaly by Michael Rutger. This was 3 stars. I thought it was good. Didn't think it was great. It was interesting. It was kind of like Indiana Jones meets, I've never seen the movie, but The Descent. And you know what? I'm just looking at this. I think all of these are backwards. So, yeah, the camera I'm filming on, I broke the rear-facing camera, so I have to use the front-facing one. So, yeah, this is only 3 stars. It was Indiana Jones meets what I would imagine The Descent is about, that like horror movie. This is actually shelved as horror, and for a lot of people. I would disagree. I would say it's like a thriller, maybe, kind of. My main dislike of this was the ending. Up until, I would say, the last chapter, maybe last 2, I was all for it. I loved it. I was like, oh, this is 4 stars. It's so great. And that last chapter, and a lot of authors do this, and it really bothers me. That last chapter, even though this is a series, felt the need to tie everything up in a nice bow. And I hate that. Leave me wanting to continue on. Like, because now I've read the end of this, and yeah, there's kind of like a dun 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 at the end of that last chapter, but it wasn't, if you had left that off and picked up in the next book around that chapter and included that information then, that would have been, I think, more satisfying, because I still wanted to continue on in the series without those last 2 chapters. And then I read those 2 chapters and I was kind of like, I don't know about that. I don't like neat, happy endings. I do sometimes, but I don't need them, especially if it's in a series. I don't want a neat, happy ending, because what's going to make me pick up the next book? Like, nothing. Unless it's done super, super well. So, I mean, yeah. And then finally, the last 2. I listened to The Truants by Kate Weinberg. I was really disappointed in this one. If you look at my Goodreads review, I don't write full reviews. I'll write like 1 or 2 sentences. Either things that I think are funny or stupid, or like what really bothered me or what it did really well. Depends on the book. But this one, the synopsis was really intriguing, which was surprising, because it was like kind of a mystery, but it felt more of like a dark contemporary, which I was into. And then I got about halfway through it and then I got bored. I had to renew my checkout on this audiobook 3 times, and you can rent them for 14 days for like each checkout. So that just shows how slow it was. And it was really disappointing because there were like heavy topics covered that happened to the character and the other, side characters. It's one main character. It's told from her perspective. They're very heavy topics that I thought the topics were covered well, but the pacing was just not ideal. The mystery just wasn't that great, and it wasn't tied together very well. It kind of felt like, oh wait, we still haven't answered the mystery. Okay, so that's 20%, so let's answer that mystery. And it just wasn't my favorite, so I gave it a 3 star because it was fine, but it wasn't anything amazing. And then last but not least, I am like, I think 60 pages from the end. It'll be finished tonight or tomorrow. It'll be finished in February, so I'm including it. Is The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater. I started reading The Raven Boys last year because I follow Kayla from Books and Lala, and it's one of her favorite series. And as she often says, she does not like fantasy too often. And even more specifically, she does not read series very often. So with her loving this so much, I was like, I gotta give it a try. I love fantasy. I love series. I will pick up a book simply because I know it's part of a series, because I am that kind of person. I want to sit with those characters for as many books as you're going to give me. I am a series whore. So I started reading The Raven Boys, loved it a lot. I'm, like I said, about 60 pages from the end, liking this one just as much. It's doing one of my not favorite things though, where it like switches to a perspective of like a not really main character, someone who is involved in the plot. So like I get it, I just don't like it. It's just not for me. Dan Brown does that with his books too. It's not my favorite. It's just hard for me to get into that character's head. I will say though, because the first book I don't think really did that, it was easier to pop back into the different boys and blues heads when it was, going back to them from the other person. So that's good. I guess we'll see how the rest of the series goes. Might as well finish it. But so far, I'm thinking I'm probably going to rate this a 4. Maybe a 4.5. I don't want to start getting into half stars because I feel like that would just confuse me. Yeah, I really like it. I like the relationships. I like the writing. The writing, I think, is done really well. And I guess I'll have to eventually figure out how to get my hands on the third book because I don't think my library has it. So those are all the books that I read in January and February. I'm planning on posting monthly wrap-ups from now on, now that I've kind of conquered my fear. Not everyone's allowed to hate me on the internet, so thanks. You guys were really nice on that feedback, and I really appreciated it. Because if it had gone terribly, you wouldn't be getting this video. So, but I wanted to give you some fun stats. To me, they're fun. So, and I think I did my math right. So I read 13 books in total. Yes, I'm including the Dream Thieves in that. So I did just different breakdowns. Maybe once I get good, I'll like include visuals. But for right now, you get to look at like beer steins and books and stuff. So hey. So out of the 13 books, I read 1 nonfiction. Everything else, the other 12 were fiction. It's not a surprise. I will read nonfiction. It's just not my favorite. And then I did this all by percents because I thought I was going to be cool and figure out how to edit in like an hour. It's not going to happen. The different categories that I read, I think 2 mysteries, 2 thrillers, 1 romance, 1 contemporary, 1 nonfiction. Let's see, 2, 4, plus 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that leaves 6. Counted on my fingers. That leaves 6 sci-fi or fantasy, which isn't very surprising. Sci-fi fantasy, my favorite, hands down. I love going and finding all of those books and finding more authors that write that genre. It's just my favorite, especially if it's done well. So next I broke it out by adult and young adult, because I haven't read young adult since I kind of was a young adult. So last year I read a couple, really enjoyed them. So I was like, all right, because I was operating under the impression that once you're no longer a young adult, you can't read it. And then I realized that's stupid because a book is a book. I was reading Tolkien when it wasn't geared for me, so why would I? Whatever. So for adult, I read, I think 10, and then I read 3 young adult because I'm not including the series by Sean McGuire. I don't care if you say it's young adult. I don't think it is. I'm not going to count it as young adult because no. And then for authors, I broke it out with male and female. I read 10 from female authors and 3 from male authors, which was shocking because I find a lot of the times science fiction and fantasy are traditionally, the regularly published ones are written by men. So that was surprising to me. So I just assumed I would read more books from men. Not true. So yeah, just a quick breakdown. In January, I had 4 5 stars, 1 4 star, and 2 3 stars. And in February, most likely 0 5 stars. We're going to go with 2 4 stars, 3 3 stars, and 1 2 star, which is not great. And I'm not happy about that. I don't like rating books low, but it happens. Not everything's for you. Not everything's meant for you. So hopefully you're reading in February, if I'm the only one posting a 2-month wrap-up. I hope all your reading in February went really, really well. I hope you found some new favorite reads or new favorite authors or just new things you want to check out. If you have any suggestions for me, leave them below because I don't do TBRs and that's a whole nother video. Yeah. Thanks for coming back and seeing my face. If you heard whining or barking, I have dogs and they don't listen. So, yeah, saying bye from the cabin. Bye.